Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get a hit with the truth. So today we are doing the fantasy heavyweight tournament. It's an interactive tournament to determine the best heavyweight of the millennium so far, of the last 25 years. This dates back it starts at the year 2000 where we had an undisputed world champion, and it runs through the new undisputed world champion, which is Alexander Usyk. So every champion in between, there was 31 of them, we are going to be doing an interactive tournament. Now, I have to start the tournament off by ranking every heavyweight, and I'm going to give you guys all the heavyweights in the tournament and where they're ranked, but I'm going to do it individually. That way you get a little breakdown of each fighter. This video is on the #1 heavyweight of the last 25 years, former two-time heavyweight champion of the world, former unified heavyweight champion of the world, Dr. Steelhammer, Wladimir Klitschko. Now, before we get into Klitschko, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So I'm super pumped about doing this one, guys. Doing this tournament and everything. So again, I'm gonna give a brief, I'm gonna give a rundown each video on these fighters. So they're gonna be 32 individual videos coming out breaking down these fighters and what they've done to be in this tournament. And then I am going to start the matchups, the first round matchups, and I'll do a video and my prediction on each one. Go through Facebook and my YouTube channel, obviously. So let's get it started here, and let's start with the #1 Wladimir Klitschko. We look at what he's done. So Klitschko, in his in this decade, or in the time from 2000 to 2024, in that time period, he competed in 29 heavyweight title fights, recording a record of 25-4 in those title fights. So Klitschko was very good. He unified titles. He reigned on for a long-ass time, and we'll get into the details. But, starting with, we're going to go into, like I said, in his career from 2000 all the way through, Wladimir was a contender towards the end of the 90s. But he had suffered his first defeat when he ran out of gas against little-known Ross Purity in a fight that he was winning. He got stopped in 11 rounds. So his stock was kind of down, seen as a talented fighter, but everybody had started to criticize him. Then in the year 2000, he was on a win streak from the loss in 98. Where he had recorded, 4 or 5, he recorded 6 straight wins in 1999. He fought 6 times and got stoppage victories in every one of those fights. And then in the year 2000, he had already accomplished 3 victories, most notably against Monty Barrett, stopping him in 7 rounds. And following his brother, then in October of 2000, he would get his first crack at a world title when he would try to avenge his brother Vitaly when he challenged Chris Bird for the WBO championship. This was a big one because Vitaly had lost the title when he was well ahead on the scorecards against Bird, but had to pull out with an injury, a shoulder injury, in the 10th round of that fight. So Bird would win by TKO in the 10th round. Wladimir became the first defense for Bird, and Wladimir dominated Bird. He scored knockdowns in the 9th and 11th rounds and went on to a convincing and one-sided 12-round unanimous decision and captured his first world title. At the time, the WBO title was not considered to be part of Undisputed, but it was gaining notoriety through the Klitschko brothers. And Wladimir would go on about a 2.5 year run as champion, and would make multiple defenses. In 2001, he made 2 defenses, stopping Derek Jefferson and then Charles Shuford. And then in 2002, he stepped up his game. He took on former champ Francois Botha, dominated him, stopped him in 8 rounds. a little over 3 months later, he took on Ray Mercer, who was a former WBO champ, and he stopped him in 6 rounds, impressively in that one. So that led to a huge showdown in December of 2002, where he would take on big-time Jameel McCline. McCline had scored victories over Lance Whitaker and Shannon Briggs and was hot at the moment. He had scored 2 major wins, and he was also 6'6". And at the time of this fight, this was the biggest, the most weight in a ring ever in a championship fight. So a lot of people were looking forward to this one, and Klitschko turned in a really lame duck performance. He was very hesitant. He would throw his jab moderately, but what was winning him the fight was the fact that Jameel McCline didn't throw anything. Jameel McCline seemed terrified to throw a punch and just would not engage. And finally, in the 10th round, he would stop McCline. He would land a left hook that put McCline down, and it was over. But Klitschko was highly criticized after this fight, which leads to his next defense that took place about 3 months later. In March of 2003, he would take on South African Corey Sanders, and instead of boxing and setting himself up against a knockout fighter but didn't have a big name, he decided to go in there and go right after Sanders, and it proved to be a mistake. Sanders put him on his ass twice in the first round, hurt him badly, and then in the second round, he put him down 2 more times and stopped Wladimir Klitschko in a major upset, and Klitschko would lose the WBO title. He would return later on that year, get a victory over a guy named Fabio Moli, then took on veteran Donnell Nicholson and stopped him. That led to April of 2004. Corey Sanders had given up the WBO belt because he wanted to challenge Vitaly Klitschko for the vacant WBC title. So Wladimir was plugged in against Layman Brewster, who was a little-known American fighter, for the vacant WBO title. Most people felt Vlad was going to easily win the title in the first 4 rounds. Looked like it, as he was dominating Layman Brewster. And then something happened. He ran out of gas just completely. And after getting hurt and put down in the 5th round, he could not recover. And the referee would stop the fight at the end of 5. And Layman Brewster had upset Wladimir Klitschko, handing him his second title fight loss, second consecutive title fight loss as well. And the criticism just rained in. He returned with, I think he got knocked down once against Devero Williamson. He got a technical decision in that one. Went on to defeat a guy named Elisair Castillo, who is an undefeated but like cruiserweight fighter. Then he had a huge showdown to become the mandatory /1 contender in 2 divisions and 2 governing bodies. When he took on Samuel Peter, who was undefeated at the time, 24-0. Peter put Klitschko down 3 times in this fight, but Klitschko showed a lot of heart. He boxed well, outgunned Peter en route to a decision win that put him back into the title mix. Then in April of 2006, he received an IBF title shot as a mandatory challenger against Chris Bird in a rematch from their 2000 bout where Klitschko dominated a decision. Bird was more aggressive, but that just played into Klitschko, as Klitschko put Bird down 2 times again in the 5th and in the 7th round. In the 7th round, when Bird got up, he was a bloody mess, and the referee would stop the fight as Wladimir Klitschko would capture the IBF heavyweight championship and become a 2-time heavyweight champion. This started a 9-year run on top for Wladimir Klitschko. A 9.5-year run on top of the heavyweight division, and as a heavyweight champion. And later on in 2006, he would defeat undefeated contender Calvin Brock, stopping him in 7. Then in 2007, he would stop Ray Austin to hold on to the IBF title, and then get some revenge on Layman Brewster as he scored a 6th-round TKO on Brewster. Then in February of 2008, he attempted to unify belts for his first time when he took on undefeated WBO champion Sultan Ibragimov. He peppered Ibragimov, outclassed him with his jab, but Ibragimov was hesitant to pull the trigger, and Klitschko didn't seem too keen on attacking either. So, but Klitschko won a clean, one-sided, unanimous decision and unified the IBF and WBO titles at that point. Then he went up against Tony Thompson, his mandatory #1 contender, and stopped Thompson in 11 rounds in 2008, and then finished 2008 with a 7th round TKO victory, but kind of uneventful, against former unified heavyweight champion Hasim Rahman. In 2009, he would take on Ruslan Shagayev in a June title defense. Shagayev was undefeated and originally the WBA champion. He never lost the belt in the ring. So this was viewed as the #1 and the #3 fighters in the world going at it, as Vitaly Klitschko had returned at that time to become the heavyweight champion again. So this was considered to be overall a bigger fight, and Klitschko dominated Shagayev, but he also took the fight on 2 weeks' notice. But he dominated Shagayev, stopping him in 9 rounds to retain his unified belts. Then in 2010, he would take on his mandatory #1 contender Eddie Chambers. After Emmanuel Stewart got on his ass and yelled at him heading into the 12th round, Klitschko went out and stopped Eddie Chambers with a left hook, knocking him out in the 12th to retain the belts. Then he took on Samuel Peter in a rematch and dominated Peter this time. Didn't get knocked down, stopping Peter in the 10th round to retain his 2 belts. Then in 2011, he would attempt to unify belts again when he took on David Haye, who was a highly regarded cruiserweight, who had moved up to become a heavyweight champ and scored victories over Nikolai Valuev, the Russian giant, and John Ruiz, and was coming into this fight. There was a lot of people that thought that this fight, that David Haye had a real chance, and but Klitschko controlled the tempo with his jab, outworked Haye, but again seemed reluctant to pull the trigger. But he secured a convincing unanimous decision victory and unified 3 of the 4 belts in the heavyweight division and was rolling in 2011. Then in 2012, he would return. He would take on former cruiserweight champ Jean-Marc Mormec, knocking him out in 4 rounds. Then he rematched Tony the Tiger Thompson, as Thompson was again his IBF mandatory challenger. This time he made quicker work of him, stopping him in almost half the time with a 6th round victory. Then he took on Mariusz Wach, who was an undefeated contender, got a one-sided 12-round unanimous decision to retain his title. Then in 2013, he would take on little-known but undefeated Francisco Pianeta and would stop him in 12 rounds, or would stop him in 6 rounds to retain his belts. And then he had a big showdown with undefeated Alexander Povetkin in a fight that was years in the making. Povetkin had been a dominant force since 2007, but had never been able to secure the title shot with either Klitschko brother. Finally, in 2013, Povetkin was the WBA regular champion because Klitschko was the super champion after he unified belts. And Povetkin had made a multitude of successful title defenses with the WBA regular belt. So the WBA ordered Klitschko to fight Povetkin. Big time matchup right here. And again, this was the battle of the #1 and #3 heavyweights in the world right here. It was a big fight and a lot of money was shelled out to these 2 guys for this fight. Klitschko went out there and kind of held and hit. He was he would jab, and was doing well. I think he scored a knockdown or 2, but he was also holding on to Povetkin every time he came close. So much so that a lot of people thought he should have been deducted points for the holding. He wasn't. Klitschko would win convincingly over 12 rounds, and but kind of uneventfully, and would retain the unified titles again. Then in 2014, he would defeat a guy named Alex Leopai with a 5th round TKO. Then would take on his mandatory challenger and undefeated Kubrat Pulev, scoring an impressive 5th round knockout win. And then his final successful defense of that reign came against undefeated American Bryant Jennings, who was thought to maybe give Klitschko a run for his money in this fight. because of his awkward style, but Klitschko controlled the tempo with his jab, outworked Jennings to a convincing 12-round unanimous decision, and retained his 3 belts. Then in November of 2015, Klitschko took on 6'9" heavyweight, undefeated Tyson Fury. Klitschko was a heavy favorite, but Fury's antics, and shit-talking made the fight interesting. And then Fury decided to shuffle his feet, fight almost a Muhammad Ali-style fight against Klitschko. And Klitschko was reluctant to pull the trigger again in his career in this fight. And Fury just did enough in a kind of an ugly fight, but he did enough as Klitschko just would not attack. And Fury scored a major upset over Wladimir Klitschko, scoring a 12-round unanimous decision and becoming the unified heavyweight champion of the world. Klitschko would try over the next year to try to get a rematch with Fury for the title. Fury was going to do it and then not do it. Fury ended up retiring and vacating all the belts due to drug and mental issues. And so Klitschko, a year and a half after the loss to Fury, would fight for his final time when he would challenge for the vacant WBA and the IBF title that was held by Anthony Joshua, the undefeated British champion. This was a great fucking fight, and Klitschko finally pulled the trigger in this one. He went after Joshua after getting knocked down, was controlling the tempo, knocked Joshua down, and then when it looked like he was in full control, Joshua connected on an uppercut in the 11th round and then jumped on Wladimir after putting him down again and stopped Wladimir Klitschko in the 11th round. A lot of people wanted to see Vlad continue to fight, maybe set up a rematch with Joshua, but Vlad decided to retire after that and has not returned to action since. So overall, Wladimir Klitschko 25-4, 2 title reigns, a unified world champion. He more than doubled anybody next to him in terms of title fight victories. He more than doubled on my point system that I set up for heavyweights based on who he beat, how many titles he won, all that stuff. He more than doubled anybody on the point system that I put together for the champions list. Wladimir Klitschko, very underrated, questionable chin, but a master boxer. His jab was fantastic. And as he got deeper into his career as a champion, he learned how to become more natural and use his talent, not just the technical side of him, because he was viewed as very robotic and all that kind of stuff. And he was also viewed as the weaker chin brother, which I agree he was. But Wladimir also set a different precedent and dominated. What held Wladimir back, though, and when you look at the tournament, we'll discuss this in his matchups and stuff. Well, you know, when we see who he fights and maybe deeper into the tournament if he advances. Wladimir in every major fight, and I'm talking like the unification bouts, or just a big fight on paper, starting with the Jamil McCline fight. I think the next biggest fight after the Jamil McCline fight, in terms of like a big name, was Samuel Peter in the non-title fight. Then after that, I would say it would have been the Sultan Ibragimov unification bout. The Ruslan Shagayev bout, he was a little more fluid in that one. But then it was the David Haye unification bout. And the Alexander Povetkin fight. And then, you know, even the Tyson Fury fight, because of the size of Fury. He was just reluctant in all of those fights to pull the trigger and go for the victory. And I think he kind of turned that over in one fight against Anthony Joshua. He showed that he had the heart to go for it and wanted it badly. And it ended up, you know, that's the risk you take, and he ended up being defeated taking that risk. But Wladimir Klitschko was very good, very talented. I believe 6'6", 6'7" heavyweight. Came in around 240, very in shape. You know, ran out of gas a couple times. Went into fights a little overconfident, but was just masterful and very good. And I think beats most of the heavyweights in this tournament. But we'll see, because this is an interactive tournament, and we'll see what you guys think. So that's it for my #1 heavyweight heading into this fantasy boxing interactive tournament to determine the best heavyweight of the millennium. Wladimir Klitschko, Dr. Steelhammer, the former two-time heavyweight champion of the world, former unified heavyweight champion of the world. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.